Ethan Marshall leaned back in his leather chair, the flickering glow of the fireplace casting long shadows across the room. In his hand was an ornate envelope, embossed with gold lettering. On the table before him sat 3 identical envelopes, each addressed to his children, Emma, Daniel, and Sophia. He hadn't seen them all together in years, not since the argument about the family company, Marshall Industries, had fractured their already fragile relationships. It was time to change that. The next morning, 3 private couriers delivered the invitations. Emma, the eldest, received hers in the bustling law firm where she worked as a high-profile corporate attorney. The bold, confident script on the envelope intrigued her. Emma had always been her father's most strategic and ambitious child, but she suspected there was more to this than a family reunion. Daniel, the middle child, was at his cramped art studio when his letter arrived. Paint-stained hands held the envelope cautiously. Daniel's relationship with his father had always been strained. He had long rejected Ethan's world of power and wealth. The invitation left him uneasy, but curiosity won out. Sophia, the youngest, received hers in her modest apartment. Unlike her siblings, Sophia had always longed for her father's approval. Yet she often felt overlooked, the baby of the family who never measured up. This invitation felt like an opportunity she couldn't ignore. The letter was succinct. "You are cordially invited to a private family retreat on Marshall Island. Details will be provided upon your arrival. Attendance is mandatory." 1 week later, the siblings found themselves aboard a sleek yacht cutting through the blue waters of the Pacific. None of them spoke much during the trip, their unspoken tensions palpable. When the island came into view, its pristine beaches and towering cliffs looked like something out of a postcard. Ethan awaited them at the dock, his commanding presence as intimidating as ever. He greeted each with an unsettling calm, his sharp blue eyes assessing them. "Welcome home," Ethan said, gesturing toward the lush jungle that framed the estate. The mansion at the heart of the island was both grand and eerie, with its high ceilings and vast, empty halls. That evening, Ethan hosted a dinner in the sprawling dining room. A crystal chandelier bathed the room in warm light, and the table was set with fine china. As they ate, Ethan's demeanor remained cryptic. He deflected questions with calculated charm, making the siblings increasingly uneasy. Finally, as dessert was served, Ethan stood, raising a glass. "I've brought you here to discuss something important," he began, his tone ominous. "But for tonight, rest. Tomorrow, we'll begin." The siblings exchanged wary glances. Whatever their father had planned, it was bound to be more than just a simple reunion. The next morning, the siblings gathered in the mansion's vast library, where Ethan was already waiting. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating rows of ancient books and an imposing desk at the center of the room. Ethan stood behind it, his hands clasped casually, yet his eyes carried a weight that unnerved them all. "Good, you're all here," Ethan said, motioning for them to sit in the chairs arranged before him. They complied, though the tension in the room was almost tangible. Emma leaned forward, her tone sharp. "Are you finally going to tell us why we're here, Dad? Or is this just another one of your games?" Ethan smirked, but didn't answer immediately. Instead, he poured himself a glass of water, letting the silence stretch long enough to fray their patience. Finally, he spoke. "You've all been wondering why I summoned you. The truth is, I've lost everything." His words hit like a thunderclap. "What do you mean, lost everything?" Sophia's voice trembled as she looked at her father, her face a mixture of disbelief and concern. Ethan's smirk faded, replaced by a grave expression. "A business deal went south, spectacularly. Marshall Industries is bankrupt. The fortune you all assumed you'd inherit is gone, and so is any safety net you thought you had. The room erupted." "This is ridiculous," Emma snapped, her voice laced with anger. "You're one of the most calculated men alive. You don't just lose everything." Daniel leaned back, arms crossed. "So what? You brought us here to humiliate us, to wallow in your own failure?" Ethan's gaze hardened. "I brought you here because I need to see what you're made of. You've lived your lives expecting the martial name to shield you, to pave your way. That ends now." Sophia looked at him, her voice softer but no less accusatory. "What are you saying, Dad?" Ethan stepped around the desk, his presence filling the room. "You'll stay here on the island until you prove yourselves capable of surviving without my wealth. There are supplies, but they're hidden. You'll need to find them. Clues are scattered throughout the estate. Work together or don't. It's up to you." Emma stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the polished floor. "This is insane. You can't just trap us here. I can, and I have," Ethan replied coldly. "The yacht is gone. There's no cell service, no internet. You're completely cut off. So, I suggest you stop complaining and start thinking." Daniel laughed bitterly. "This is typical. A power trip disguised as a lesson." Ethan ignored him, turning to leave. At the door, he paused. "Breakfast is still served at 8. After that, you're on your own." He walked out, leaving his children reeling in stunned silence. Sophia broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think he's serious?" "He's always serious," Emma muttered, pacing the room. Daniel slumped in his chair, shaking his head. "I'm not playing his game. Let him keep his clues and his lessons. I'll find a way off this island myself." "You really think that'll work?" Emma shot back, her frustration spilling over. "This isn't just about us. He's testing something. We need to figure out what." Sophia stayed quiet, her gaze fixed on the large map of the island hanging on the wall. The room fell into an uneasy silence, each sibling lost in their thoughts. They knew their father well enough to realize one thing: Ethan Marshall never made idle threats. The morning sun rose high over Marshall Island, casting golden light through the mansion's tall windows. By the time the siblings gathered for breakfast, the mood was tense. Ethan, true to his word, sat at the head of the table, sipping coffee. He barely acknowledged them as they filled their plates. "Enjoy your meal," he said simply before walking out, leaving behind an awkward silence that was broken only by the clink of cutlery. Emma was the first to speak, her tone sharp. "We can't just sit here. We need to get organized." "Organized for what?" Daniel shot back. "This is just another one of Dad's manipulations. I'm not wasting my energy on his little treasure hunt." Emma's gaze hardened. "You'd rather sulk and hope for a miracle. That's a solid plan." Daniel smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Why not? You'll handle the strategizing for all of us, right? Like you always do." Sophia looked between them, her voice tentative. "Maybe Emma's right. If we work together?" "Work together?" Daniel interrupted, his tone laced with sarcasm. "Because we've been such a united team all these years." "Enough," Emma snapped, standing abruptly. "If you want to waste time being bitter, fine. But I'm not sitting around. I'll find these clues myself." With that, she stormed out of the dining room. Daniel rolled his eyes, but when he looked at Sophia, her anxious expression softened his irritation. "Don't look at me like that," he muttered. "Like what?" Sophia asked. "Like I'm supposed to care about all of this." "Because I don't." Sophia hesitated, but then decided not to push further. "I'm going to check the library," she said quietly, rising from her seat. "There has to be something there." Daniel shrugged. "Knock yourself out." The day wore on as each sibling pursued their own approach. Emma, methodical and determined, scoured the mansion's study, combing through drawers and documents. She found nothing of immediate value but noticed a locked drawer in their father's desk. Her frustration grew as she realized it would require a key, yet another obstacle. Sophia spent hours in the library, poring over maps and journals. She found references to specific landmarks on the island, but couldn't decipher their significance. Her mind raced with possibilities, but without help, the pieces refused to come together. Daniel, true to his word, did little. He wandered the grounds aimlessly, kicking at the sand and muttering under his breath. Though he didn't admit it aloud, a part of him couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan's challenge wasn't as pointless as it seemed. That evening, they reconvened in the living room. The air was thick with tension. "Anything?" Emma asked curtly, though she already guessed the answer. Sophia shook her head. "There are clues in the library, but they're incomplete. I think they point to something outside the mansion." Daniel sighed dramatically. "Great. Zoe, we're stuck with riddles and scavenger hunts. Fantastic use of our time." Emma shot him a glare. "Do you have a better idea, Daniel? Or are you too busy sulking to contribute?" "Here we go again," Daniel said, his voice rising. "The great Emma Marshall, barking orders like she runs the show, newsflash. You don't, at least I'm trying." Emma snapped. Sophia stepped between them, her voice firm for the first time. "Stop it, both of you." They fell silent, startled by her sudden assertiveness. "We're not going to get anywhere like this," Sophia continued. "If we don't figure this out together, none of us are leaving this island." Emma and Daniel exchanged a tense glance, but said nothing more. Later that night, as they retreated to their rooms, Sophia lingered in the library, staring at the map she'd been studying. Her fingers traced the contours of the island, stopping at a small, marked cove. She whispered to herself, "Maybe this is where we start." Unbeknownst to her, Ethan watched from a hidden camera feed in his office. A small smile crept onto his face. "Good," he muttered. "Let them squirm a little longer." The sun rose slowly, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple. Emma was the first to leave the mansion that morning, driven by her frustration. She had no intention of waiting for her siblings to rally. If they didn't want to cooperate, so be it. She headed toward the dense jungle that framed the estate, armed with a map she had pieced together from scraps found in her father's study. Sophia, meanwhile, had spent the early hours analyzing the cove marked on the map she had discovered in the library. The mark seemed deliberate, and though she wasn't entirely sure what it meant, it was a starting point. Daniel woke late and wandered aimlessly again, his skepticism about Ethan's motives still holding him back. Yet as he passed the courtyard, he noticed something peculiar, a glint of metal beneath a weathered statue. Curious despite himself, Daniel pried at the object until it came loose, a small, engraved box containing a riddle. The path to clarity begins where the sun meets the water's edge. But beware, for even the clearest reflection may deceive. Daniel sighed heavily, stuffing the box into his pocket. "Typical Dad," he muttered. By mid-morning, the siblings found themselves unintentionally converging near the mansion's eastern cliffs, drawn by the same instinct to investigate the coastline. "You're here," Emma said, her voice sharp with surprise. Sophia held up her map. "I think there's something at the cove. I was heading there." Daniel, leaning against a rock, smirked. "Guess we're all playing Dad's game after all." Emma bristled. "Some of us are trying to get answers. You're just tagging along." "Enough," Sophia interjected. "If we're all heading in the same direction, we might as well do it together." Reluctantly, they agreed. The path to the cove was treacherous, winding through dense jungle and uneven terrain. Along the way, they were forced to rely on one another. Emma's sharp eye caught markings etched into tree trunks. Sophia's map-reading skills kept them from getting lost. And Daniel, despite his indifference, proved surprisingly adept at clearing obstacles. As they neared the cove, the siblings stumbled upon a small clearing. At its center stood an ancient stone sundial, its surface weathered but legible. Surrounding it were 3 locked chests, each bearing a name. "Emma, Daniel, Sophia. What is this?" Sophia asked, stepping forward. "A test," Emma said grimly. Daniel knelt by his chest, examining the lock. Figures he'd make it personal. Emma found an inscription carved into the sundial's base. "To unlock what is yours, Confront what you hide. Only truth will turn the key. They exchanged uneasy glances. Confront what we hide, Sophia echoed. What does that even mean? Emma shook her head. It's obvious. He wants us to confess something we've been avoiding. It's his way of forcing us to air our dirty laundry. Daniel scoffed. Great. Therapy by treasure hunt. Classic Ethan. Still, they had no choice but to comply. Emma stepped forward first. Fine. I'll go. She placed her hand on her chest and spoke, her voice steady. I've sabotaged deals within the company, deliberately. I wanted to secure my position, no matter the cost. The lock clicked open. Sophia stared at her, stunned. You sabotaged the company. Emma didn't meet her eyes. I did what I had to. Your turn. Sophia hesitated, then moved to her chest. Her hands trembled as she spoke. I've always felt invisible, like I didn't matter. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm good enough, even if it means pretending I'm fine when I'm not. Her lock clicked open. Daniel exhaled sharply, his chest still untouched. This is ridiculous. You can't avoid it, Emma said coldly. Reluctantly, Daniel placed his hand on his chest. Fine. I've always hated this family. I hate the expectations, the judgment, all of it. I wish I'd never been born into it. His lock clicked open. The siblings stood in silence for a moment, each processing the raw truths that had been laid bare. Inside their chests, they found identical items, a small mirror, a compass, and a folded note. The note read, "Reflection is the key. The journey continues at the water's edge." What does this mean? Sophia asked. Emma studied her mirror, her expression unreadable. It means this isn't over. Daniel pocketed his compass. Great. More riddles. Let's keep moving, Emma said firmly. As they descended toward the shoreline, Ethan watched from the mansion's surveillance room, a rare flicker of emotion crossing his face. Good, he murmured. But the hardest part is still ahead. The siblings followed a narrow path that wound its way to the shoreline. The sound of crashing waves grew louder with each step, a stark contrast to the tense silence between them. None spoke of the confessions they had made at the sundial. The weight of those truths hung heavy in the salty air. By the time they reached the cove, the sun was high, its reflection bouncing off the shimmering water. The area seemed untouched, save for a single weathered pedestal standing near the edge of the tide. Resting atop it was an intricate metal box, its surface etched with strange symbols. What now? Daniel asked, breaking the silence. Emma stepped forward, examining the box. There's an inscription, she said, running her fingers over the engraving. Sophia leaned closer. What does it say? Emma read aloud. The mirror reveals the truth. The compass points the way. Only together can the path be unlocked. Daniel groaned. More riddles. Fantastic. Emma ignored him, pulling out her mirror. It's a reflection puzzle. We have to align them somehow. The siblings retrieved their mirrors, holding them up to the sunlight. As the light reflected off the surfaces, it created a pattern of glowing lines that converged on a small opening in the box. It's working, Sophia said, her voice tinged with excitement. The box clicked open, revealing another riddle inside, written in their father's meticulous handwriting. You've faced your truths, but deeper ones remain. Follow the compass to the place where the past is buried, and all will be revealed. The three looked at each other, unease flickering in their eyes. Emma spoke first. The compass must lead us to another location. We should follow it. Hold on, Daniel interjected. Why are we just going along with this? Dad's obviously dragging us through some twisted therapy session. What's the point? The point is to get answers, Emma shot back, and to get off this island, unless you have a better idea. Sophia stepped between them, her voice soft but firm. We've come this far. Let's just keep going. Reluctantly, Daniel pulled out his compass, aligning it with the others. The needles pointed inland, toward the heart of the jungle. "Great," he muttered. "More hiking." The jungle was dense, its humid air heavy with the scent of earth and leaves. As they trekked deeper, the terrain became steeper, forcing them to rely on one another to navigate the rocky inclines. Sophia was the first to speak as they climbed. "Do you think Dad planned all of this to make us talk?" Emma interrupted, wiping sweat from her brow. "Probably. He always liked controlling the narrative." Daniel chuckled darkly. "Yeah, because nothing says healthy family dynamic like emotional blackmail. At least he's trying," Sophia said quietly. Emma stopped abruptly, turning to face her. "Trying? Is that what you call this? He's manipulated us our entire lives, and now he's playing puppet master from his little control room." "She has a point," Daniel said, crossing his arms. "He doesn't care about us. He cares about his legacy. This whole charade is just his way of tying a neat little bow on it." Sophia's face flushed with anger. "You don't know that, don't I?" Daniel snapped. Before Emma could retort, Sophia stormed ahead, leaving her siblings behind. The compass led them to a clearing where the jungle gave way to an overgrown cemetery. Time had ravaged the gravestones. Many were cracked or covered in moss. In the center stood a single, pristine headstone marked Elizabeth Marshall, their late mother. Sophia froze. "Mom!" Daniel's usually defiant expression softened, and Emma's hand tightened around the compass. At the base of the headstone lay a weathered journal, its leather cover embossed with Ethan's initials. Emma picked it up, hesitating before opening it. Inside were pages filled with their father's handwriting, detailing moments from their childhood. For the first time, his words were raw and vulnerable. "Emma, my strategist, so determined to win that you forgot the joy of the game. Daniel, my dreamer, always running from a world you thought you didn't belong to. Sophia, my light, desperate to shine but never realizing you already did." Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she read the words aloud. The final entry was dated a month before their arrival on the island. "I've failed them all, but perhaps there's still time to make them see what I see in them, to help them find themselves before it's too late." The siblings stood in silence, the weight of their father's words settling over them. He blames himself," Sophia said, her voice trembling. Emma closed the journal, and now he's trying to fix it, in his own twisted way. Daniel knelt by their mother's grave, running a hand over the cool stone. "Maybe this isn't about the money or the company," he said quietly. "Maybe it's about us." For once, Emma didn't argue. Sophia placed her hand on the headstone, a tear slipping down her cheek. "What do we do now?" Emma unfolded the note tucked into the journal. It bore a single instruction: return to the mansion. The answers await. As they turned to leave, the weight of their confessions and their father's words lingered. Each step back to the mansion felt heavier, the unspoken emotions between them growing louder. From his surveillance room, Ethan watched their progress, his expression unreadable. The hardest truths had been revealed, but the final test loomed ahead. The siblings returned to the mansion as dusk fell, the jungle's vibrant greens giving way to shadows under a crimson sky. None of them spoke during the trek back, each lost in thoughts of their confessions, the revelations at their mother's grave, and the journal they now carried. By the time they entered the great hall, Ethan was waiting for them. He stood near the fireplace, the warm glow illuminating his sharp features. He turned as they approached, a faint smile playing at his lips. "So," Ethan began, his voice calm but probing, "did you find what you were looking for?" Emma stepped forward, holding the journal. "We found your little time capsule, yes, was that the point? To guilt us into forgiving you?" Ethan's smile faded. "No, Emma, that wasn't the point. He gestured for them to sit on the couches arranged around the fireplace. "But you're close. Sit, we have more to discuss." Reluctantly, they obeyed. "You brought us here to confront ourselves," Sophia said quietly, breaking the silence. "Partly," Ethan admitted, sitting in a chair opposite them. "But this is about more than just reflection. It's about understanding what truly matters." Daniel scoffed. "Oh, here we go. The philosophical lecture about family. Spare us, Dad. You've spent years making it clear we were secondary to your empire." Ethan's expression hardened. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't wrestled with the mistakes I made, the times I chose business over birthdays, or meetings over memories?" He leaned forward, his voice growing softer. "I know I failed as a father. But do you know what kept me up at night? It wasn't the thought of losing the company, it was the thought of losing you." Sophia's eyes welled up. Emma looked away, her jaw tight, while Daniel stared at the floor, uncharacteristically silent. Ethan continued, "This island, this test, it's not about money. I could give you everything tomorrow, but it wouldn't fix what's broken between us. You've all spent your lives chasing something, power, freedom, approval, but you've done it alone. I wanted you to see that the real wealth, the real strength, comes from each other." Emma's voice cut through the heavy air. "You don't get to play the martyr here, Dad. You created this mess. You pitted us against each other from the start." Ethan nodded solemnly. "You're right, I did. And I don't expect your forgiveness, but I still hope, that you can forgive each other, that you can see what I see, that each of you brings something the others need." Daniel looked up, his voice unsteady. "Why now? Why all this?" Ethan leaned back, exhaling deeply. "Because I don't have much time left." The words landed like a blow. Sophia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Emma froze, her composure cracking, while Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "What?" Emma demanded, her voice sharp and raw. "I'm sick," Ethan said quietly. "It's inoperable. I've known for months." The room fell into stunned silence. Ethan continued, his voice steady despite the gravity of his confession. "I've spent my life building an empire, but it cost me my family. I couldn't let it end like this. I needed to know that when I'm gone, you'll have each other. That the bitterness I sowed won't destroy you." Sophia, tears streaming down her face, had whispered, "Why didn't you tell us?" "Would it have changed anything?" Ethan asked gently. "Or would you have come out of obligation, not because you wanted to be here?" Daniel stood abruptly, pacing near the fireplace. "So, this was your solution? A survival game? Emotional blackmail? You could have just talked to us. Would you have listened?" Ethan countered. "Would you have heard me if I hadn't forced you to stop and face yourselves? You've spent years running from each other and from me. I needed to break through that." Emma, still clutching the journal, finally spoke. "So what now, Dad? We've confessed. We've faced your tests. What do you want us to do?" Ethan's gaze softened. "That's up to you. The final choice is yours." Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out 3 small envelopes. He handed one to each of them. "Inside are the details of your inheritance. The money, the assets, everything. You can accept it or reject it, but I want you to think carefully about what you're taking or leaving behind." Emma opened hers first, scanning the contents. Her face revealed little, but her grip on the paper tightened. Daniel hesitated before unfolding, his jaw clenching as he read. Sophia held hers in trembling hands, too overwhelmed to look at it yet. Ethan stood, his commanding presence now tinged with vulnerability. "Take the night to decide. Tomorrow we'll talk." The siblings sat in silence after Ethan left the room, the crackling fire the only sound. "What are you going to do?" Sophia finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at her siblings, her hardened exterior softening. "I don't know," she admitted. Daniel stared into the flames. "I wanted to walk away from all of this, but now I don't know anymore." Sophia wiped her eyes, clutching her envelope. I don't want to lose either of you. Not after everything." For the first time in years, the three of them shared a moment of quiet understanding. In his office, Ethan watched the scene unfold on the surveillance monitors, his expression unreadable. His work wasn't done yet, but for the first time, he allowed himself a glimmer of hope. Morning broke over the island, golden light streaming through the mansion's tall windows. The siblings gathered in the dining room for breakfast, their father already seated at the head of the table. Ethan's usual commanding presence was tempered by something softer, an unspoken awareness that this day carried weight far beyond the others. No one spoke as they filled their plates, the clinking of silverware the only sound in the room. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Have you made your decisions?" he asked, his voice calm but probing. Emma was the first to speak, setting her coffee cup down with a deliberate motion. "Before we answer, I want to understand something," she said, her tone sharp. "Why now? Why not years ago, before we became this?" Ethan met her gaze, unflinching. "Because I thought I had time. I believed I could fix things after the next deal, the next merger. But time isn't a luxury I have anymore." Daniel leaned forward, his voice tinged with frustration. "And you thought dragging us here, putting us through all of this, would fix things?" Ethan nodded slowly. "I didn't know if it would work, but I had to try. You're more than my legacy, Daniel. All of you are. I needed you to see that." Sophia, her voice quiet but firm, asked, "And what about you, Dad? What truth are you hiding?" Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're right to ask that. I've demanded honesty from you, but I haven't given you mine. So here it is. I spent years obsessed with building something that would outlive me because I was terrified of being forgotten. I thought if I made myself indispensable, you'd need me. But in the process, I pushed you away." The room fell into a heavy silence, Ethan's confession sinking in. Emma broke the silence. "So, what happens now?" Ethan gestured toward the envelopes in front of them. "That's up to you. Each of you has the choice to accept or reject the inheritance. But this isn't just about money, it's about responsibility. Whatever you decide, it will shape not only your future, but the future of this family." Emma hesitated before speaking. "I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm the best, that I deserve to be here, but I've realized that winning means nothing if I lose everything else. I'll take the inheritance, but only if it's split equally between us. No conditions, no hierarchy." Ethan nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Daniel exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. "I've been running from this family for as long as I can remember. I thought rejecting all of it, money, legacy, you, would make me free. But maybe freedom isn't about escaping. Maybe it's about choosing what to hold on to. I'll take enough to start over, to invest in my art. But I don't want control of the company or anything else." Ethan studied him for a moment, then inclined his head. "Fair enough." Sophia, tears brimming in her eyes, looked at her envelope. "All I've ever wanted was to be seen, to matter. But I've realized I don't need the money or the company to prove that. I want the chance to lead, Dad, to show you and myself that I can do it. I'll accept, but only if I have your trust." Ethan's voice softened. "You've always had my trust, Sophia. I just didn't say it enough." The siblings looked at one another, a tentative understanding forming between them. For the first time in years, the divisions that had defined them seemed to blur. Ethan stood, his movements slower than usual, but his voice carried a renewed strength. "You've made your choices and I respect them, but know this, my time may be limited, but yours isn't. Use it wisely. Don't waste it on grudges or regrets. Sophia stood and walked over to her father, wrapping her arms around him. For a moment, Ethan was taken aback, but he returned the embrace, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. Emma and Daniel exchanged a glance before joining them, their family finally united, if only for a fleeting moment. That evening, the siblings gathered on the mansion's balcony, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The air was filled with a sense of closure, but also the faint stirrings of hope. "You know," Daniel said, breaking the silence, "maybe this island isn't so bad after all." Emma chuckled. "Don't get used to it. I'm ready to leave as soon as Dad lets us." Sophia smiled, her gaze on the horizon. "I think we all needed this, even if it was hard." From his study, Ethan watched them through the window, a faint smile on his lips. He knew his time was running out, but for the first time in years, he felt at peace. The morning after their final conversation with Ethan, the siblings woke to find the house unusually quiet. No staff bustled about, no breakfast was set on the table. Instead, a handwritten note awaited them, resting on the dining room table beneath a silver tray. The note read, "I've given you the tools to choose your paths. Now, it's time for me to take mine. Meet me by the northern cliffs at noon." "Dad," Sophia read it aloud, her voice tinged with apprehension. "What do you think he means by his path?" Emma's brow furrowed. "Knowing him, it's probably another test," Daniel frowned. "Or it's something else entirely. Either way, we don't have a choice. Let's go." The northern cliffs were a stark contrast to the lush jungle that surrounded the mansion. Jagged rocks jutted out over the ocean, the crashing waves below creating a rhythmic roar. Ethan stood at the edge, his back to them, his silhouette framed by the endless expanse of blue. As the siblings approached, he turned, his expression unreadable, but his posture more relaxed than they'd ever seen. "Thank you for coming," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the wind whipping around them. "There's one last thing I need to say before we part ways." Emma crossed her arms. "You keep saying part ways. What exactly are you planning, Dad?" Ethan offered a small smile. "Nothing dramatic, I assure you, but this is the end of your time on the island and the beginning of something else." Sophia's voice was soft. "What do you mean?" Ethan gestured to a wooden bench overlooking the sea. "Sit with me for a moment. Humor an old man." Reluctantly, they joined him. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, its vastness mirroring the weight of their unspoken thoughts. "I've spent years fearing what would happen when I was gone," Ethan began. "But after seeing you here, working through this together, I realize now that I don't need to be afraid anymore. You'll be fine. Better than fine, and that's all I ever wanted." His words hung in the air, heavy with finality. "Is this why you brought us here?" Emma asked. "To say goodbye?" Ethan nodded. "In a way, I won't be leaving the island with you. This is where I'll stay, for however long I have left. This place, it's where I feel closest to your mother. It's where I want to be." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, you don't have to do this alone." Ethan reached out, placing a hand over hers. "I'm not alone. I have her memory, and I have the knowledge that I've done everything I could to set you on the right path. That's enough for me." Daniel, usually quick with a sarcastic remark, remained silent, his expression a mixture of sadness and understanding. Ethan stood, his movements slow but deliberate. "You'll find a boat waiting for you at the southern dock. It's time for you to go." The siblings rose, their reluctance evident. One by one, they embraced their father, each hug carrying years of unspoken words. Emma whispered, "I'll make you proud." Sophia choked out, "I love you, Dad." Daniel lingered the longest, his voice low but firm. "I'll remember this, all of it." Ethan smiled as they pulled away. "That's all I could ever ask for." The walk to the southern dock was quiet, the siblings lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the boat, it was a sleek vessel stocked with supplies and their personal belongings. Sophia turned back, gazing at the distant cliffs where their father stood. She raised a hand in a silent farewell, and for a brief moment she thought she saw him wave back. As the boat cut through the waves, the island grew smaller on the horizon. Emma broke the silence. "So, what now?" "We move forward," Daniel said simply, surprising them with his newfound resolve. Sophia nodded. Together. Back on the island, Ethan watched the boat disappear, his heart heavy but full. For the first time in years, he felt at peace, knowing he had given his children the gift of each other. He turned back toward the mansion, his steps slow but steady, ready to embrace the time he had left on his own terms. The ocean roared behind him, endless and eternal, carrying the echoes of everything he had built and the family he had finally brought back together.